Welcome to the NHL show live on the Sauter on Sports Podcast Network. I am Marc Sauter. Good to be back talking NHL, talking draft. I've said this on multiple platforms. I don't remember a Stanley Cup final that was this much of an afterthought this quickly. So much news and notes coming into the Stanley Cup finals and coming out. We're going to get into that. I have a special guest, Jordan Orth from the Hockey Writers, going to join me momentarily. First, to remind everybody, this show is brought to you by First Round Collectibles. Right now, with promo code SPORTS10, get 10% off whatever sports card you want in the entire First Round Collectibles store. Hockey, football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, F1. I probably forgot one. They have it all. FirstRoundCollectibles.com. Promo code SPORTS10. Whenever they have a sale, which is often, not only do you get 10% off of regular price items, but sales items as well. So go to FirstRoundCollectibles.com today, promo code SPORTS10 for 10% off your order. And Total Apex Sports, Total Apex Media. Again, the hockey season might be over. Lots of news coming out as we speak. They'll have you covered over there. Basketball, same thing. The football season is never over. Baseball's in full swing. Whether it's regular news, betting, fantasy, daily fantasy, they have you covered over there. Total Apex Sports and Total Apex Sports. TotalApexMedia.com. All right. He covers the Detroit Red Wings and the Pittsburgh Penguins for the HockeyWriters.com, and was a huge part of the draft coverage over there. Great job by the team, by everybody. If you need in-depth draft coverage or just a snapshot overview of the weekend, the HockeyWriters.com has some great coverage, and Jordan was a big part of that. Jordan, how you doing on a Hockey Monday, man? It's good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. I'm doing good. It was an exciting weekend with the draft, so we'll see what happens when free agency opens up with whatever's left over.
Yeah, and I mean, I said this at the top of the show, and I've said this on many different platforms. Do you remember a Stanley Cup final like this where throughout the playoffs, I think Toronto took up a lot of the oxygen, and then the coaching search out with the Oilers, and there was just so much other stuff coming up to the final, and then it was like 2 days later the Stanley Cup was just an afterthought. And it's like I don't remember a final like this in a while, where it literally feels like months ago.
Yeah, it kind of felt like it was put on like the back burner almost with everything else going on. I mean, for watching it, I loved watching it, but like you said,
Yep.
it seems like it was months and months ago at this point with everything that's been going on.
Yes. So you wrote a terrific article, helped me a lot. Like I know, I'll admit it. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. I know the like big name prospects. I know just enough to get by in like water cooler conversation. People that I know in life know that I cover sports, cover hockey, so I know enough to, fool them into thinking that I know what I'm talking about. But you wrote a terrific article up at the HockeyWriters.com that was a perfect one paragraph per team, kind of giving a grade on the draft as a whole. You hit everybody, and we'll kind of go through what we go through here before we get into the winners and the losers and all that kind of stuff that every podcast in North America is doing right now. What was just your biggest overall takeaway from the weekend? I also, sorry, just to just kind of thinking on the fly, I also don't remember a draft with this much like action, like trades all throughout day two, not just day one. It was just a very busy draft, which doesn't seem to be the case with this league. But what was your biggest takeaway from the weekend?
I think you kind of got to expect the unexpected. It's kind of, I mean, like you said, you see all these trades. Obviously, some of them, obviously the Bowen Byram to Chicago for the number 4 was, kind of
Yeah.
out of flow, but you get that every year, but some of the stuff it makes you say, well, obviously nobody really knows what goes on in these GMs' minds sometimes. Rankings sometimes don't matter either. You look at some of the guys that some of these teams taking it where they take them, it's like, well, it's like Joe Aginla getting a 3rd round pick from Calgary. You probably could have got him later, but it's a feel good story. So, I mean, yeah, my biggest takeaway is you never really know what's going to happen. Obviously, you get your Stenberg and McKenna at the top. Everybody kind of figured that, barring some miraculous, I don't even know, barring some major shakeup. But yeah, I think it just comes down to the chaos and not knowing what's going to end up happening.
So what were the or I guess who were the biggest winners? I think like it's like I'll just say with my kind of limited knowledge, I've been pleasantly surprised with John Jacob and the Leafs just ever since he took over. I've been very clear, as a lot of people have been, how just ridiculous that hire was, and it didn't help that the press conference was a gong show, and like there's just so much that it's like, this is the Toronto Maple Leafs and you're hiring a Wendy's owner who was kicked out of the league 6 years ago. Like, what the hell are we doing? But it's been turning out pretty good so far. I thought that his day 2 was super strong. Obviously, the Sharks, there's many different places we can go. But who were your winners from the weekend?
Yeah, you hit on 2 of them. I think the Leafs did a really good job, like you said, especially their day 2 picks. I mean, you get Ethan McKenzie. Yeah, he's an overager and a re-entry, but he's developed his game. I mean, he's one of those guys that being a bit older is going to help him out and put him in a better spot in the organization. Obviously, you get McKenna number 1. That kind of just puts you up towards the top no matter what you got.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, but you look at the value they got throughout the draft with Bilecki and Gudmundsson. I mean, you look at all the picks they had. They hopefully hit on what they've went with, and then you hit on the Sharks. I mean, you look at what they've got already. You got Celebrini. You got Misa. Don't know why I blanked on that one. I got his jersey right behind me. I mean, you look at the young core they've got there, just with those 2 guys, all they've got. I mean, you add Stenberg, Verhoff, and Ryan Lynn all in the first round. So that right there, I mean, that gives you a massive win just in one round. You get Brady Nolan, which you don't necessarily need a goalie, but Detroit's kind of proven you never can have too many of them. So you add him to your system, who in my mind was a great pick in the 4th round. I'm kind of excited to see him play up here in Saginaw when he comes up here and plays. But those 2 teams, and I think the Kings, I mean, they needed to add some skilled guys in their system, and that's exactly what they did. They, as much as I hate to say it, Ken Holland did a good job.
What? So on the Sharks, I have a question about the Leafs as well. But with the Sharks, I was curious about this. Now, I cover the Dallas Stars as well, and everything going on with Jason Robertson. And I actually wrote a piece last week that was based off of a Dallas Stars podcast that I listened to. It wasn't my own idea, but kind of spitballing ideas where, hey, who do the Dallas Stars need if they don't sign Jason Robertson? And a player like Matthew Nyes is somebody that the Stars have needed for the last 3-4 seasons. Somebody big, somebody physical, gritty, wins battles, all that stuff. And just spitballing ideas of trading Robertson to the Sharks and getting the 2nd pick and then taking that pick and doing this. And but that kind of made me think with the Sharks, are you surprised that they used all of their picks in the 1st round? Because, like, to me, no doubt that they got like great picks. Like, you just laid it out. Like, they did a terrific job. They also need to continue to add like players who are in the NHL who can kind of take them over the hump to that next step. This felt like they're still treating this as the middle of a rebuild rather than a team that was like 4 points away from a playoff spot, right? Did that surprise you at all?
Kind of. I mean, if maybe if the word he knew, of the possibility of him maybe wanting out of Columbus came out a little bit sooner, maybe you'll see them make a hard push for him with a couple of their picks. Maybe.
Yeah, good point.
But yeah, I mean, you look at it like you said, they're on that verge of do we go all in for a player, or do we keep doing the adding and waiting? Who knows how long for these guys to end up making that jump to the NHL? But I don't think Mike Greer's in too big of a rush. He knows what he's got. As long as it doesn't turn into a 10-year rebuild like we're in the middle of here in Michigan with the Wings, I think they'll be all right. But yeah, I was kind of surprised. I mean, I think a lot of people were that they used all three. They thought, I know from what I had heard and read, that they thought maybe they could move one or two of them, and like you said, add a piece that's going to be in the lineup every night this next season. But either way, they made out good with what they've got. So, but I know they can't be too upset about that.
Yeah, 100%. With the Leafs, what is to be made? And I know, like, a big topic of conversation right now is you have Artie, who just won you the Calder Cup between the pipes. I'm just calling him Artie. I'm not going to make a fool of myself on here on the airwaves. I do that with like really simple names, so I'm not even going to try that one. But he just won the Calder Cup for you. You have Hildeby, who has proven that he can be at the very minimum a backup in the NHL. I thought he played very well last year for the chaos that he was thrown into. But he can't be sent back down without clearing waivers, and the goaltending situation across the league is such a mess that I would doubt that he would not be taken off of waivers if he was sent back down. They traded Joseph Woll. Ersson just got traded to Ottawa, if I believe. I could be wrong about that just off the top of my head. But Stolars is still a goaltender that I know up here, like, we're not opposed to seeing him moved as well. My point is they got a lot of goalies, and they drafted 2 back-to-back in the middle of the draft. What are we kind of to make of that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few teams that did that. I mean, again, you can't have, I guess, too much goalie depth. Obviously, you got your East Coast teams or whatever else. But yeah, if you're gonna, if I honestly don't really know, because you can. I'll look back at the Red Wings. The Red Wings have a roster full of goalies that they've drafted the last 6-7 years. Are they all going to play? Obviously not. But at some point, either they become trade chips like Costa did with the Wings, or you've got the flexibility to maneuver things around. So I think that just it gives Chaika and the rest of the organization something to think about if these guys can develop their game. I mean, obviously a goalie don't have to be a first or second round pick to end up panning out. What first goalie was a second round pick, but doesn't mean the 6th or 7th round guy is not going to end up being an NHL starter either. So I think it just gives them the flexibility to do, say, if things in a couple of years aren't working out with, if they still got Stolars or whoever's in net, it's like, okay, well, these guys down in, whether it's the AHL with Toronto, with the Marlies or wherever else, okay, well, these guys are doing all right. Maybe we give them a shot, or you got that fallback option. Like, okay, we can move this guy because we know this guy has the potential and has shown at the level he's at that he can do it. So it's really just kind of a crapshoot to see what ends up happening with everything.
Yeah, and I mean that was kind of one of the issues that people had with trading Joseph Woll, which for me, I was okay with it just because I think as high of a ceiling as he has, the guy can't stay healthy, and Stolars can't start more than 33 games in a season. So I think it doesn't matter who you go with, there's dependability issues. And obviously the goaltender with the higher value is Joseph Woll. So if you're trying to move a goalie, and that just made sense to me. But up here, a big problem people have with trading Joseph Woll is that the Leafs don't have homegrown goaltenders ever. Like you look back at that like 9-year playoff run, it was Freddie Anderson, right? Not homegrown. It was Samsonov or Samsonov, depending on which day of the week it was. He was not homegrown, right? Obviously, Stolarz, not homegrown. Matt Murray, who never played, I don't think, in the playoffs to my recollection, but he wasn't homegrown. Like Joseph Woll was like the Felix Potvin. He was like, oh my God, like we actually grew a goaltender from the roots. Now Hildeby is that, Artie is that. So I kind of like it. It just kind of took me by surprise where all the focus on just the fact that a lot of our prospects are coming up and just the whole cupboards need to be kind of filled back up again. But I personally like the moves. Any other winners that you took away before we move on to the losers?
I mean, there's always teams that have solid drafts. I mean, those are just the three that popped off the most with what they added, at least for me personally. So,
yeah. All right. So everyone loves to talk about the negative most. Losers. Who were the losers coming out of the and losers sounds strong since like these are prospects and we have no idea who's gonna pan out, who we won't know who the real losers were for like 6 years from now, but who were the teams? I struggle to find another word other than losers, but like where I'm coming from.
Yeah, who like the underwhelming ones. We'll go with that. That's
underwhelming.
Yeah.
Perfect word. Underwhelming.
Yeah, I think I got 3 or 4 here. You can lump kind of like Tampa Bay, Boston, and Edmonton all in the same group. Just obviously, they were all kind of limited what they had for picks and stuff. But you look at like the guys they took and where they took them. They obviously, on the outside looking in, you look at whether it's the rankings or what you've heard about these guys, and kind of like, well, you probably could have got him. Say if you got somebody in the 3rd round, you probably could have got him in the 4th or 5th. I mean, you even look at Boston. They took the 10th ranked European goalie with their 2nd round pick over the guys that they could have had. They really liked the Europeans in this draft for them. But yeah, I think you look at those 3, they didn't really, again, from the outside looking in, it's just kind of one of those things like you're valuing these guys a lot more than obviously everybody else just by looking at what you read or whatever you hear. But then, I mean, Montreal, obviously, they're in that mode where they're that up and coming team that's in the playoffs. Obviously, we saw that, but I mean, you look at what they picked, and it's more organizational depth than anything. Pugachev in the 1st round, he's got the talent to be an NHL player, but at 26, it was kind of a bit of a surprise to me for them to take him there. So, yeah, I mean. There's no true, like you said, there's no true losers in the draft yet until, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. Who knows, maybe even longer. But, yeah, those ones were just a little underwhelming for what, you kind of expect from some of the teams. I mean, and then you look at some of the guys that were undrafted that could have gone to those teams or, anybody really. But it's, for teams that are trying, you look at Tampa Bay, they obviously haven't had a 1st round pick in how long or hung on to one. So that doesn't help their case either with Edmonton or anybody else. But I mean, Boston had overall their weekend wasn't bad getting JJ Peterka, but yeah, I just think those 4 teams were a little underwhelming in my mind.
Well, and Tampa Bay is the interesting one because they, like they won the 2 cups and then they have done a great job in getting free agents or in, trading for players. But their drafts have not been very strong in a while. And so that does feel like a team where it's like, if their goal is to keep this window open for as long as possible, eventually they're going to need some help from like their draft. Like they're going to need it, right? And I think that yet again, I can't remember. Obviously, you'll know, but the first player they drafted in the second round, I can't remember his name, but just a player that a lot of people, not just you, a lot of people that I've been listening to were just like, who? Like that's
Krabelik?
Yeah. And so it's just interesting to me. A team that has had so much regular season success, a team that, despite what they do in the first round, seemingly every year, they're a Stanley Cup favorite heading into the season and coming into like I did I can't remember if it was a podcast or a TikTok or something. I did something it just before the Olympics that was basically saying the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Carolina Hurricanes are the only two teams that could possibly come out of the East. Like there's no other team. And Tampa Bay, that didn't even last for 5 minutes that when the playoffs started. So that is interesting to me that this is not something that we haven't seen from the Lightning.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, at some point you're going to have to hit on something, whether it's your draft picks. I mean, you don't even have to hang on to your prospects. Teams do it all the time. You end up moving them. Look at Vegas. They don't keep any of theirs half the time, anyways. So,
yeah.
I mean, at some point you're going to have to get guys that are either going to help you directly or trade or something and they just don't seem to necessarily have that. And I mean, you get Isaac Howard, who doesn't want to go to Tampa Bay. So what does he do? He ends up going to Edmonton for Sam O'Reilly, who was a great OHL player. Don't get me wrong, but is he going to be a massive impact NHLer? Probably not. He'll probably be your mid to bottom six, third line guy. That he's that gritty guy. Watching him as much as I did living in Saginaw and dealing with them, you watch him with London. It's just he's one of those guys you want in your lineup, but he's not a top line player.
Yeah. All right, moving on to actually before I do, I wanted. Well, this could, whatever. I'm already here. This could probably come up in another segment here in a few minutes. But since you did mention Joe Aginla, you got the Calgary Flames jersey in the back. I just wanna, and I'm not. Let me make this very clear. I'm not calling him a loser in this draft, okay? But like I said, I don't have a ton of knowledge with a lot of these deep cut players, right? A lot of people are not very impressed with this pick. Why? No. Because what seems to be the general consensus, which is what you're going to say, I'm sure, is that if you want to draft him for the good story, fine, but you didn't have to shoot your shot in the third round, right? That seems to be the consensus. But kind of fill me in more as to why is the hockey world not too impressed with taking him where they did?
Well, like you said, using a third round pick on him when there's guys that are available that could make an actual. I'm not saying he never will make an impact at the NHL level. I'm not saying that because again, we don't know what'll end up happening, but you have guys that are on the board that are more likely to be an impact player or even just an everyday NHL player. And I mean, he has the skills. He's not at that level of Tej. He's the second one. Well, he's got a couple other siblings too, but he hasn't gotten to that level with his game. Where Tej, obviously, he was on the big stage at the Memorial Cup and all that stuff this year, but he hasn't gotten to that level yet. So, yeah, I'd taken him, I think he's the 200th ranked North American skater. You're taking him in the third round. So, like you said, you could have got him probably fifth, even sixth, maybe even seventh round. Like, I get wanting to add him because, Jerome was a legend in Calgary and, like you said, the good story. But, yeah, I don't disagree with the people that aren't too keen or excited about that pick, especially where it was made.
All right, so moving on to the surprises in the top 10. I know off the top, Chase Reed was a big one, going as far down as he did and please, by all means, you can touch on that one as well. But it seemed like going into this draft, it felt like that with the Leafs, you couldn't go wrong with McKenna or Stenberg. Obviously, the general consensus was McKenna, but if they decided to kind of go off the path a little bit and get Stenberg, it wasn't that far of a reach. Um, and then for everybody else, it felt like the top 7 picks, you couldn't really go wrong. There wasn't like a clear cut 1, 2, 3, and then everybody else. It felt like, and again, somebody who's not a professional when it comes to the prospects and the draft, it felt like it was a pretty wide open top 10. That being said, what were the biggest surprises of the top 10 on Friday night?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and for me, there really wasn't a whole lot outside of, like you said, Chase Reed falling to 7, as much, falling from. I had him at 4. Obviously, that was before Chicago traded the pick. I even had him at 2 or 3 after San Jose made that trade. But yeah, I think him falling to 7 and Rudolph getting taken as the first defenseman was the biggest one for me. I mean, other than that, you could maybe say Wyatt Cullen jumping all the way up to 10 to Nashville, but you watch him throughout the season and his game, the developmental program kind of struggled this year, but he was still one of those standout guys that when he was on the ice, you noticed him. So him jumping up like he didn't really surprise me a whole lot, but they're really, like you said, it was kind of cut and dry the first handful of picks. And after that, you kind of knew guys were going to go certain place, go in the top 10, just didn't know exactly where. So there really wasn't a ton of surprises outside of Rudolph really being the first defenseman taken.
And day 2, I feel like, again, just hearing, I feel like there were quite a few surprises in day 2, but what were the biggest ones for you?
Yeah, you look at just like the value on, I guess, the thoughts on different goalies. You look at where some of these guys went, like Boston taking Ivanov when they did at 52, I think it was, or something like that in the second round. And then you had, again, Brady Noling, who, again, the developmental program where he was at this year kind of struggled, but number 1 ranked North American goalie falling all the way to the 4th round. So just seeing how organizations value some of these goalies on how, where they took them and stuff. And then you look at Vladimir Dravecki falling all the way to the 5th round to the Rangers. It's like that could end up being a steal. You watch him play, and he should have been, in my mind, a fringe 2nd, 3rd round pick just by how he plays the game. I mean, it's almost like teams forgot he was still available, and New York's like, oh, he's still there. Let's take him. Why is he still here? So
right.
I mean, you just look at it, like you said, it's hard to really get a gauge on what teams and GMs are thinking, obviously, unless they come straight out. This is our board right here. Here you go. And obviously, that ain't never going to happen. So, especially, being a Red Wings fan, you've kind of learned that GMs don't really let too much out. They kind of keep everything tight-knit and a little close to home with everything. So, it's just you never know what to expect. You get a lot of surprises out of everything with the draft for the most part.
Now, this just kind of popped into my head. So kind of throwing you kind of a curveball just off the top of my head, but what did you make of the St. Louis Blues this weekend? Because I'm always very cautiously high on this team. Like, I'm always very cautiously high going into the season. The players they have, the talent they have. Obviously, they've had certain holes in certain spots, but they're always a team that should be better than they are. I just feel like that. I feel like every season they should always be better than they are. And then they were better and were like, 2.9 seconds or whatever it was from winning Game 7 against the Jets. And then last year, we all know what happened last year. But trading Kyrou, trading 2 of the top because they had, if I'm not mistaken, they had 4 picks in the first round, and they traded 2 of them to get McTavish, correct?
Yeah.
And then you bring in McTavish. What are your kind of thoughts on not only the draft, but how the Blues kind of reshaped their team overnight?
Yeah, I think you look at it, it's like they're trying to shuffle the pieces around while still, you give up 15 and 29. Yeah, you have 4 first round picks. You're definitely not going to use all of them. Everybody kind of figured they weren't. But I mean, you look at McTavish, you give a kid a new place to look, or a new place to play. Uh, and he's got the upside. They traded for Brandon Carlo too, obviously. And
Yep.
it seems like they're just shuffling things around to see, okay, maybe we can get this to work, maybe we can get that to work, while still adding. I mean, you still got the draft picks you had. You're still building for the future while still trying to keep that team close to the playoff push. So it's kind of like I don't want to say retool, but like I said, just a shuffling of the deck, just trying to keep things afloat, because you don't know what's going to happen with Bennington. You keep seeing, no matter what or when, it's always, well, are they going to keep him? Are you going to move on? Or what's going to happen there? So, I mean, they've got their hands full kind of trying to figure out what exactly and where exactly they fit in.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And the hard part with Bennington, man, and we saw it when he played for Team Canada the last 2 years, like, he's a really good goaltender, in the bright lights. For whatever reason, when the big games come, it just brings it out of him. And 2, behind a really good decor, which the Blues are not. And bringing in Carlo, I think he had a really bad go in Toronto. Like, I think he's a really good. He's a good defenseman, and I just feel like for whatever reason, in Toronto, he was just one of the whipping boys last season, and Toronto. For as long as I've been alive, defense is a really hard position to play in this city. Like, we eat our defensemen alive, and that was Carlos' story last season. So I think taking it was a 3rd round pick. I think that's, you're not going to get. And I like that it was Trika who did this, where it's like, this wasn't my trade. I didn't trade for this guy. We're just going to get whatever we can get. Like, I'm curious if Tree Living did live to see another day. I'm curious if he could have swallowed his pride enough to get a 3rd round pick back after everything that they gave up to get him in the first place. So I personally like that ad. All right, man. I love it. We flew through that. Is there anything else from the draft that we didn't touch on? Any other storylines? Anything that kind of caught your eye?
No, I'm more or less interested to see how developmental camps go with these teams. I mean, they got a lot of them have started today. You see all these undrafted guys, getting these invites. Be interesting to see who stands out of that group. You had a decent amount of guys that went undrafted that, like, okay, well, I mean, like Jean Christophe Lemieux, or you got Callum Krosky. More of an OHL guy, because I'm big into the OHL. But you look at you got a lot of guys that you're sitting there like, okay, that would have been a good fit here instead of this guy. So keeping an eye on some of those guys, see if any of them catch on anywhere, or what happens. And I mean, just seeing who ends up, how many of these guys are going to be like a Matthew Schaefer or a Michael Misa that end up making that jump to the NHL right away. I don't know how many there will be. Maybe it's just McKenna, maybe Stenberg. You even look at Albert Smits with where he's played. Does he make the jump to New York full time right off the bat? What all happens? So,
Yeah. Awesome, man. I really appreciate it once again coming on, Jordan Orth from the HockeyWriters.com. What do you got coming out? What do you have that's out from the weekend? What do you have coming up down the pipe, and where can people find your work?
well, I got a little bit with the Penguins going on. We're going to do a post-draft prospect rankings. Not really got anything in the queue for the Wings right now. Working on that, trying to figure that one out. Other than that, yeah, you can just find me on X, Twitter, whatever you guys all call it, at Jordan Orth on Twitter. So that's about it.
Absolutely love it, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. To everybody else, I did have Jacob Billington, also from thehockeywriters.com. It's great to have a plethora of people way smarter than me that I can come on the show and make me look good from time to time. He came on last week after the Brady Tkachuk news and before the Eklund news. So a little bit kind of early on that front, but he came on last week if you want to go back and watch that show. Next week, the MLB show and the NFL show get back going. Took the spring off because the NHL consumes my life this time of year. But the MLB show and the NFL show with Tom and Joe will be back next week. I don't even know what I have coming up as far as writing goes. I gotta sit down tonight and figure out what I'm gonna do. But once again, the show, first round collectibles, promo code sports10 for 10% off your order. Total Apex Sports and Total Apex Media. Thank you everybody for hanging out. Jordan, appreciate you coming on, and we'll be back later in the week. We will see you next time.